Today is November 15th, 2019, and on this video, I'm going to talk about stuff and toys that I had in the 70s and 80s, like in the early 80s particularly, and things I can remember getting for Christmas and stuff. I'm going to be showing you some pics. Well, in this screensaver on this computer, this right here, it was where my tape recorder was at. Sharp GF 4141. Well, anyway, this was 1981. Well, so during, the toys that I had during the 70s, I can remember some of these toys. So, in the 70s, Christmas of 1970, or in the 70s, I remember, this was one of the things that I got, around Christmas of 1976 or something like that. This was a treehouse. They called this toy treehouse. I mean, it's funny because, some people kind of thought of this being for girls, and I don't know if it would be considered being for girls, but I wanted one of those, and I got one for Christmas, and I liked it. I liked the toy, when I had it. This one was the toy that this brings back a lot of memories, because I had one just like this one. It was a Little People garage. It was like this one, where we would put the cars in there, and then we would get the elevator, and then when the elevator goes on the top, and then the car would roll down. This was one of the biggest things that I remember, And then this toy right here, I received this for Christmas. I think it was probably 1978 or something like that. I received one of these, and this was another toy I loved, back in the day. I liked it back then, for a short time. And then, after a while, after having it for a time, I decided to break the toy. I would bang it on the floor to try to break it apart, because I wanted to get the insides of it, especially the wind-up silvery part that was like a roll. Yeah, I had one of these. But now in the early 80s, in the early 1981, my aunt gave me one of these for Christmas. And I remember these toys, these TCR racing toys, the electric cars, you had to plug it in, and then the tracks were metal, they had little metal railings, and then we used to control the speed, depending on how far you depress the little lever there. I had one of those in 1981, and this toy, it was from 1976. When I received one of these, for Christmas, and I tell you, it was probably one of my favorite toys of all time. It was 1976. It was one of everybody, all the youngsters, all the little boys wanted fire trucks. If you would wonder why we liked, fire trucks, or why we liked things that were big. The bigger the toys were back in the day, the better it was. The better it was. Also, well, that was some of the things I received for Christmas. Now, more things that I've received for Christmas. In 1980, this is not exactly the car that I received for Christmas, but it was similar. It was pretty similar to this. I received one of these for Christmas in 1981 while I was visiting Mexico at the time. And I love that toy, you know. Well, anyway, yeah, I received one of those, but that was all I got in 1981. So, and then no, that was 1980. This was Christmas of 1980 that I received this. Then in Christmas of 1981, Hector received one of these for Christmas of 1981, and my aunt, my same aunt, bought this for Hector in 1981, and then bought me the TCR set, and that was for Christmas. And then Arnold, like on that same year, 1981, he received a bike that was similar to this, but this is not the same one. But Arnold, received a bike like this, but it was a Huffy brand, and it was like a brown. It was kind of like a light brown, like a tan collar, with a little bit of orange, and kind of like a two-tone orange. It was a Huffy brand. It was similar to this, and it was a banana seat bike. Arnold received one of those for Christmas, and he was really upset of my dad, and he was even crying, that he received this bike because he wanted a Diamondback, or he wanted a BMX type bike. And so Arnold got really upset about receiving this bike instead, But anyway, and then this bike right here, Hector received one of these on that same year, 1981. 1981 was one of the best Christmases in my childhood, if I can remember. The Hector received one of these. It was a beach cruiser from 1982. It was exactly like this one. He received one of these. It is not the same one, of course, but for Christmas. But only 2 months later, it got stolen. Hector got it stolen only like 2 months later. I think even probably not even that, And then my dad beat Hector to shreds, for that day. And then in 1983, my dad and my mom bought Arnold this TV, but originally he was going to give Hector, they were going to give Hector this TV for Christmas, but my aunt had already bought him a radio cassette recorder, and it was like kind of like a cheaper one, but my aunt bought him one of those, bought Hector one of those, so my dad and my mom decided to just give the TV to Arnold, back in 1983. And there's a close-up picture of that. We had one exactly like this one, and I used to play my Atari on this too, back in my day. I can remember those days. Now in 1985, this VCR, this was our very first VCR, and this is a VCR that I received, that we all received from my mom for Christmas. And it was like a very basic VCR, or kind of like, because back in the day it was just like those push button channel changers, and then we were able to use a remote to do the cassette players and stuff. And I remember that. The fancy VCRs back in the day, in this day, was about $500 for something really nice. But this one was $229, at Zodi's. But in 1985, $229 was equal to like $700 though. Back in the day. So imagine a $500 VCR. In 1985, it was equal to like maybe $1,200-$1,300 in today's money, But that's what we had, That was during the 80s. And then, if it's not talking about Christmas, these are some toys that I used to have. I had this one. I used to have one of these, like in the 70s. I had one of these. It was a Tonka bulldozer toy. I love that toy too. And I used to call it the tractor, you know. And this one, I had one of these, exactly like one of these. I had one of these, and I loved it too. Well, yeah, I mean, it went together. I mean, I liked it because it matched this one, because I had the two at the time. But, but it was not exactly to scale between these two things, but I still liked it though. I mean, I used to actually ride on this, you know. I used to put my knee on there and I used to push along like a skateboard, you know. That's what I used to do, you know, back in my day, you know. I liked it, that toy, you know. I liked it, you know. And then this one, going on to like 1978 or so. This is a toy that I had also, and I love this thing. This was one of my favorite toys ever that I ever had. You know, it was something that I bought at the garage sale for like $3. You know, and it was like to build the skyscrapers. And I think I even have a picture of it too. I'm gonna actually show it. I'm gonna show the picture of it. Hang on. Where is that? Speaking of which, you know, there's a picture of me with that toy that I had, and I really loved that toy too. Yeah, I tell you, I love that. This was one of my most favorite toys that I ever had, you know, but there was a lot of other toys that I had, and I loved them too. Like this, I had a Lego police station before. I don't remember if this is exactly the one that I had, but I had a Lego police station at the time. You know, I had one of those. You know, and then my neighbor had a Lego how we call it, fire station, and me and my friend or me and our neighbor would get together and we'd bring our toys together to create like a little city, you know. On this one, Arnold had one of these. It was a little people Fisher Price hospital. I remember this. I totally remember this too. It was like the hospital toy. Yeah, I tell you, I totally remember these. You know, this was in the mid '70s. You know, and then I think in 1980, or I think it was for my birthday of 1980, I received one of these. Capsula. It's kind of like a building toy, kind of like a science type building toy, where you know it came with these little balls that you put together, like working balls with working gears and battery powered motors and stuff like that. It's like I had one of these. You know, I liked it so. I mean, it was not something that I loved, but I mean, I liked it so. It gave me something to do, you know, back in the day. This is a toy. I did not ever own one of these toys, but this was a toy that I really wanted back in my day for Christmas. It was called the Tinker Toy. I used to play with this in school, and I wanted one of these for Christmas, but I didn't get one, and I never owned one of these, by the way. But this was a toy that was pretty popular back in the day. And then, now here's one toy that I could never forget, and this was something that I received as a gift. I don't know, for like as a visitor gift or something. Then this was something that I got, and I tell you, I was like, I really loved this toy. This was probably my ultimate favorite toy of all the times in my childhood, because I loved things to do with building stuff, like the girder and panel stuff. So this is like what the toy looked like, you know, like it was Lincoln Logs, and it came with these little panels and the roofing and chimneys. I tell you, I love that toy too, man. I really loved it, man. Until one day my dad decided to throw it away, and I got really upset at my dad for doing that, you know. So that was, and then in the mid 70s, I think in the mid 70s, I received one of these for Christmas too. It's kind of similar to the Mr. Machine toy. Like it was also clear that the Mr. Machine toy that I was showed you earlier, it was clear like this, and it showed the inner workings of all the parts. And I actually later on like decided to break the toys, and I wanted to try to break into them and break them so I can get to the inner workings of the toy, especially the spool, especially the wind up silvery spool, because it had the little it was like the rolls, you know. I mean, I had one of these, and then also, I mean, Hector, I know, received or had one of these type of toys. If you remember, that these toys, like some of these dolls, they had like they had a little pull cord, and you would pull the cord, and then it would say something, it would talk, and then the cord would end, and then you would just pull the cord again, and it would say something, and sometimes it was actually random things. It was kind of like programmed to like maybe 3 or 4 phrases, and it would say any of them at random times, you know. We had toys like this back then, you know. You know, this is just another shot of the things that we had similar to this, you know. And then of course in 1985, Cynthia, you know, had one of these things, and she had the Cabbage Patch dolls, you know. Yeah, kids, I remember those, you know. And then not to mention the Garbage Pail Kids. Although, if it would be a memory of toys, you know, it would be like for the 80s. Well, we didn't get toys in the 80s because we were already grown up, but only in the early 80s do I remember. But Cynthia, you know, I can't remember from the back of my mind about what type of toys. Well, Cynthia had like Little Ponies, I think, things like that. And this is a toy that I had once too. I had one of these. It was an answer clock that looked like an owl. I had one of these before. And it's like, you know, like you would like move the clock, the analog clock, and then you would point at whatever, and then it would actually tell you the time digitally, you know. I had one of these. I like that toy. And that's everything that I have to talk about for the time being, you know. So those are things that I remember, you know, in my days, you know, I'll tell you. So what do you guys remember having for toys, you know? What do you guys remember? I mean, there's several other toys that I've had, but I can't remember every one of them to the back of my mind, you know. But, well, anyway, of course, toys that I loved back in my time too. I mean, I had Big Wheels. Now, Big Wheels was probably like some of the biggest how do you call it? I mean, what do you call it? One of the biggest things one of the biggest parts of my life, you know. Yeah, I'm gonna see if I could show a pic of the. Yeah. So this is a picture of that Big Wheel that I had. I tell you, I loved my Big Wheels, you know. I tell you, I loved our Big Wheels, you know. Back in the day. And I can remember one time when I was crossing the street with the Big Wheel, and then a policeman came by, and then he was scolding us for riding the Big Wheels across the street, you know. And so I tell you, yeah, I can remember my days, you know. And then of course, you know, this was more pictures of us, you know. I mean, this is me and Arnold when we were kids, when we were little, you know. Well, yeah, the toys, you know, like, yeah, I tell you, I mean, I can remember all those days, you know, like, I mean, it's hard to forget those days, you know. Well, yeah. So this should wrap it up for this video. Well, I hope you liked this video now. So, Yeah. So anyway, all right. So today, this is November 15th, 2019. And I hope you guys have a good rest of the day. Alrighty.